good morning or afternoon to all of you. As always, we appreciate you taking the time to come listen to us talk. This is a very popular subject. We run this webinar quite frequently, and we always get great attendance because it's a pretty interesting issue for those people that it affects. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at my Octel is end of life, now what? Although you can substitute Octel for any number of other legacy voice platforms that are coming end of life. So if we talk about why we would be doing this, it's a pretty clear case we can make. Back when you bought that legacy system years ago, we were in the market trying to sell you our system. Unfortunately, you didn't make that choice back then, but you get a chance to correct that now. But the concept is we are certainly in this market. In fact, the CX product has the longest time in the market of any product on the market by a factor of about 3. We were very lucky that we started at a time when you could use open systems and operating systems and hardware, so we've never had to sunset our product, which is what they're doing to these proprietary products. So that gives us kind of a unique aspect on this market since we've been there all along. You could have actually installed an AVST system back in 1985, recorded your name and greeting, and be using that same recorded name and greeting today. Clearly, we've improved the system and added lots of functionality, but we have managed, because of the open nature of the system, to grow it forward. And that means we have a lot of functions and features in the system from that legacy world that you just won't find in the newer systems. As we look at our software today and what drives us, we've spent so much time looking at communications and unified communications, in particular in the last 10 years, that we've sort of developed 3 areas of focus. And what we found is communications needs, while there's some sort of generic need you could probably describe, they tend to differ depending on who you're talking about. Individuals have very specific needs. They're mobile. They move around, and there's very special things you need to do to support them. And on the other end of that spectrum, businesses, those needs are fairly well developed after the years. People know, how they expect to communicate with a business, and it's kind of our job to build those tools. And then lately in the middle, teams is kind of a new challenge. There's always been teams and collaboration, but that used to be 10 people going down the hall into a room and working together. And now, because of the mobility factor and the unified communications factor, that's a much more complex environment. So we also have some very special focus on the teams piece. Now, we're not going to break any of these focuses down today. Today we're really talking about the replacement market kind of at a generic level, but we do have other webinars that talk about all of these areas if it's of interest to you. So as we build software, as I said, there's a lot of things we need to do. We're very big in replacing legacy systems. We're the clear leader there. That's kind of well known within the industry. And part of that is because we have all of those legacy features in it, which makes it a very easy transition. But part of it's because with our system, it's a very comfortable feeling to know that if you buy our system today, as you move forward, regardless of what you may need to change in your infrastructure, you can take our product along with you. We integrate to every system out there, every groupware out there. We're kind of the last of the large independent players, and that gives us a very strong story in terms of it's safe to go with us today regardless of what changes you might have coming up. And at the same time, we are still consistently leading the market in next-gen features. And once again, we're not talking about a lot of those in this presentation, but if you're really looking at the best of UC, you should keep an eye out in your email for some of our other webinars. Not new at this game, been doing this, like I say, for 30 years. And while we did start our life as a small voicemail player doing branch office work, the large companies buy the Octel and the VMX, and then for their smaller offices, that's where we would hopefully be the player. But over the years, we've grown that, and we're now pretty much an enterprise-level player. And these are just some of our customer names. Marketing likes to have slides so you can feel comfortable. We're not the most well-known name because everything we do sits back in the server room, and no one gets to see the name on it. But besides just comfort, this slide also points out kind of our flexibility. Every one of these customers was deployed in a slightly different manner because, let's face it, every customer infrastructure, while at the very highest level you might talk about, oh, I have multiple locations, soon as you get down to that next level and you talk about what's been consolidated and what hasn't and how many different types of systems you have out there, enterprises are very complex. And in each one of these named accounts here, we could go through and talk about what they did that was different. Some have 60 locations and centralized. Some have 50 locations and kept everything separate. Everyone had a different set of requirements, and we're just flexible enough to do that. So as you look at the need to replace your legacy system, there's a lot of things you need to consider beyond just, oh yeah, let me plug a new voicemail in place there, because your organization is changing, your infrastructure is changing, and you really need that flexibility. Helping us along with our business, of course, is Avaya, as they discontinue so many products that it puts us just in an ideal space to start picking up some of this business. And those of you that have an Octel have probably seen the emails over the last couple of years, and we're creeping up to the last and final date on this. And the bottom line is, most people love their Octel. Very few people take out their Octel either because they think it doesn't work, or even because they think they like new features. While there are some customers I talked to that said, yes, I would like to add new features to my Octel, but since Avaya is not building them, I'm not going to get rid of it. I still love that system. I don't want to retrain my users. It hasn't gone down in 10 years. Great story. Unfortunately, none of that matters because come the end of the year, there's really no choice but to replace that system. And it's not just a matter of plugging something in its place that does exactly what it does, because that old world of a completely silo proprietary voicemail system is gone. And now you need to make the how do I put this into my infrastructure decision, which is broader than just what product do I use to replace it. It isn't just the Octel, by the way. There's a number of other systems, and these are just the Avaya systems. There's actually some other manufacturers that have the same issues as well. But in this case, the CallPilot and Modular Messaging systems are basically done in terms of support by the end of the year. Now, CallPilot 1 actually lasts over into January, so it's got a little longer to go. But if you have either of these platforms, you're going to need to replace them. And probably these dates aren't what are having you replace them. What's probably forcing you to look at replacing those is the fact that they run only on Windows Server 2003, for which support ended officially from Microsoft back in July. Now, what does that mean? It means that if suddenly somebody discovers a big security hole in Windows 2003, it's going to be there forever because Microsoft's not building any more patches for it. So most people's IT groups have taken the stance that Windows Server should be off the network already, and that's where a lot of the drive for having to get rid of the legacy systems comes from, is the fact that Windows Server is just not a supported operating system. And that's always a difficult challenge when you have to replace something, not because you want to and not because it's bad, but because of these other features, end of support, server systems, etc. It's not as pleasant of experience as going out and buying something because you want to get new functionality. One of the great things as you look at our system, if you choose our system, it's really the last system you're going to have to choose. Doesn't matter what you have today. We work with every phone system out there, every groupware product out there, and it doesn't matter where you're going. You may have a more traditional TDM telephony infrastructure still in place where you haven't gotten around to updating it, and you're worried, well, if I replace my Octel or my CallPilot today, how much does that limit me when I get ready to replace the larger fabric, which is the telephony fabric, or the network infrastructure fabric even? What if I decide I want to go into the cloud? All these issues are far less concerned if you choose the CXE product, because we're not owned by a particular switch vendor or a network company. Our product is aimed at every environment out there. And basically, we're happy to sit down and talk with you. Your long-range plans, we'll explain to you how we'll fit into those quite nicely. In terms of this decision, it tends to be a first level, oh, I want to replace my voicemail, so let's make sure I have all those features. But it doesn't take long to realize this new platform won't just be a voicemail. It's going to be a unified communications platform. So a little more work needs to be done. Even if you're not planning on deploying unified communications right out of the gate, this will be the platform that you do it with. So unfortunately, that means more work for you. In terms of voicemail, we're a very safe choice for replacing the voicemail. As I said, 3 decades of delivering voicemail. All the features you have in your legacy voicemail that I'm aware of, we have. I've never had anyone say, oh, here's a feature we have in our old one and you don't have that. Not saying there isn't something out there, but we've never found it. On top of that, we also have the user interfaces for most of those legacy voicemails. So we have alternate telephone user interfaces you can put on the CX that emulate the ARIA, Serenade, Intuity, Meridian Mail, CallPilot, Centigram, Adomo, which is actually the or a messaging interface, or the Active Voice product. These are the most accurate emulations on the market. Now, everybody has something they will sell you if you're getting rid of your Octel, your ARIA. But when you really look at it, almost everyone else has just mapped the top couple of levels of keys. The reason you want an alternate telephone user interface is so you don't have to retrain your thousands of users. Just changing the keys on top doesn't do that. So if you're concerned about the user experience in a migration, talk to us and let us send you the documents we have that show you, here is the legacy key system map, here is ours. Top to bottom, it's mapped. Now, there's a few small things like setting up some of your mailbox options where our keystrokes are different, because let's face it, those mailboxes don't have that many options, and we do. So we haven't been able to figure out a way to do that. But for all of the handling the messages day-by-day functions, we have perfect emulations on those. And of course, we don't use Windows 2003 anymore. We have support for 28 and 2012, working on the next version already, and we are current in terms of Exchange and every groupware product out there. On the call processing side, this is another area that gets overlooked sometimes. Not a lot of people buy a new automated attendant system because there's just other ways that we're using for communications these days. That being said, there's an amazing amount of menus out there as we talk to legacy customers. And once they realize that and start looking at them, there's a great deal of concern because it turns out a lot of the new products didn't really put that functionality in very well. And there's just not, you could easily have an Octel out there doing things that you would look at a new Aura messaging, it won't do it. You could look at Skype for Business, it won't do it. They just didn't bring that older technology forward. I don't think they understood what the usage patterns were out in the real world. But because our product was built, 30 years ago, and we've been adding features to it ever since, I don't know of any automated attendant features you could have that we don't have. And on top of that, we can do it all with speech as well. Speech is the new interface moving forward, whether people like it or not. It's just one of those things. And we have a full speech rec automated attendant as an option you can turn on. This is not, like most of our competition, a separate product, not separate ports. You simply add the speech rec resources on the system, and those menus that are using DTMF can now also use speech recognition. Makes a much smoother process for the outside caller when it's deployed that way. The next thing you look at as you're replacing a legacy system, in many cases, larger corporations with multiple sites have experienced the joys and benefits of centralization. Perhaps you had 8 locations and you had 6 email environments, and your network was all disparate, and it was complex to make things work, and you couldn't have people be very productive because they didn't know all the different products. So you fixed your data network by centralizing. You put in great servers in your server room, great data connections, reduce the number down to maybe you probably only have one groupware system, and that centralization makes everything easier. It makes people communicate in a much more intelligent fashion, and it makes it cost less to maintain. And now that you've done that in most of the data world, you're looking to do that in the telephony world. Some customers have done that. Some customers have centralized their telephony environment. Others have looked at it and started, and still others have looked at it and said, yeah, I have to do it soon, but not right now. When you look at doing that, there's a bunch of things that come along with it, not the least of which is you now want to consolidate your call processing systems. So if you have 5 Octels out there, when you're done, you don't want to have 5 replacement systems. You just want to have 1. And we are the ideal system for that. Some of the reasons I've already talked about. If in each of those systems you have out there are connected to a different telephone system, that's not an issue for us. We connect to everything. If you need to replace the systems and you still have multiple groupware products, that's not a problem. CX can connect to as many groupware applications as you have running out there. If all of a sudden you see that number of ports start growing as you roll all those Octels together, It's not a problem for us. We offer 752 ports, and that's the most available out in the market. We haven't had a customer yet that needs more than that, although there's a couple that are getting close. And then the next thing is the all my eggs are in one basket scenario, and also the IT department is much more involved than it used to be, and now the whole concern over reliability and redundancy raises its head. So now you don't just need a big system somewhere, you need a big system that has disaster recovery, resiliency, and all those pieces in it. And we have, bar none, the best story on the market, and we are happy to talk to any customer. This typically happens to us where we go in the room with the whiteboard and they draw out their very complex network, and we get up and put our components in the various places and talk about what we can do. And there's really nothing we can't do that I know of. We have certainly full redundancy, we have geo redundancy, we have automatic failover, all of those pieces that you need to have a resilient, redundant network that matches whatever your company policies are. And of course, this also includes virtualization. You can virtualize CXC on VMware or on Hyper-V, and between that set of features, it's pretty rare for us not to be able to go in and simply meet whatever needs a customer has in terms of their centralization process. So it's easy to talk about all this. Let's kind of look at a customer case who did a lot of this. And this is a particularly interesting one because the people at San Diego State probably went through one of the most rigorous RFI and RFP processes that I've seen. It took quite a while. They started early. They understood what they needed to do. They understood their own environment. And so what they did was start very early, bringing people in the RFI process and grilling them with great intent. And they knew exactly where they wanted to get to, and they looked, I think, at everybody in the market. And I think there's a reason that they had that concern. They are the largest university in San Diego and one of the largest in the CSU system, 34,000 students and 9,600 staff. And all of those people have, communications needs that these people who put this system in are responsible for. So their goal was to replace their voicemail system as a starting point with minimum disruption. And they needed to do it in a more resilient fashion than just putting a single voicemail requirement in. They had very specific IT requirements. We spent a lot of time with their data department. They needed interoperability because they are already partially in the cloud. So the completely on-site only solution was not of interest to them. And going forward, they know they have mobile UC needs that are coming in the next year or so, and they wanted to make sure that whatever system they started with, they could move forward into the mobile market with smartphones, tablets, and all of the other things that are challenges for every IT department out there today. And they also wanted to take advantage of automation. It's interesting when we replace some of the legacy voicemail systems, the people that put those legacy systems in were very interested in using the technology. So lots of menus, lots of automated functionality, some of which is still around, but the mentality of automating things is very strong, and this was true in San Diego State. And so they were very interested in all the things we could do with our platform, although not all right now. But they definitely wanted to know that when the time came and they made a decision to go in that direction, that this product would go along with them. So we started by kind of looking at their landscape. They had an Astra, Mitel, Ericsson, PBX, and they were Google Gmail users, which is not the most common thing, although it's fairly popular in higher ed. But we have a full integration to Google, so that wasn't really a challenge for us. And this was, like we said, a very busy system. They did a lot of things through that system, and they were doing 200,000 calls a week. So they were not only worried about the size of a system, but they needed an architecture that would guarantee them uptime. And part of our architecture involves our ability to deploy multiple servers. So just we can split the call handling on multiple servers. We have control servers that can be redundant. All of that functionality was something that they were interested in. They're one of the customers, and this is not true for everybody, but they were one of the customers that considered voice a mission-critical application. We talk to a lot of people who say voice is less important now. No one's really ready to back away. No one's really ready to say no voicemail, thank you. I think the truth of the matter is human nature dictates that your customers are going to want to yell at you sometime, and they don't want to do that in email. So there will always always be calls coming in and the need to take a message. But these people actually, like I say, they used voice as automation. And they really needed to know that when these various functions that they do start happening, and some of them for them, because they're higher ed, are very seasonal, they needed to make sure there was always going to be what they needed there. And we spent a lot of time with the whiteboard and going through all the options, and they picked a very resilient solution, and I think they're pretty happy for that. One of the things about when we go out and talk to a customer is because we're a private player, because we're not owned by anybody, we make it a point to make our product work and test it with everything on the market. Everything that we can find, everything that's popular in an enterprise, you know, we will take the time and trouble to put the integrations in. So while lots of people do unified messaging with Exchange, we do it with Exchange, Gmail, Notes, Office 365, Novell GroupWise, any IMAP compatible server. All of that is part of the product and fully tested every software release. We access calendars. There's a lot of calendars that we do various functions with, and we do that testing as well. For instant messaging and presence right now, while we work around a number of other products, we definitely fully integrate with the Skype for Business, both as a telephone system and a presence engine. And then out in the world of enterprise data, when we look at our custom data tools, we'll see we have the tools to automate data access. And that's one of the custom things that people like about our product. And those tend to have to be custom because everybody's looking for slightly different kind of functionality, and we're able to offer that. So the first step, as I said, for them was voice. Let's replace that Octel. Let's put that alternate TUI in, and let's get those users on board with absolute minimum disruption to the business. For everyone replacing a legacy voicemail, this is the first step. And most people start by saying that that's all they think they are going to do. But as they get down the process further, they realize that there's more to just replacing the voicemail. They need to be careful. They're setting themselves up for success as they move through some of the unified communication solutions. So the next step actually for San Diego State was some of the mobility functionality. Unified messaging was an important piece for them. Speech is an important piece. And all the rest of it they've looked at, they've identified possible needs, and it's just sort of all sitting there as they roll through after this implementation is done, which it has been for a while now. They'll continue to evaluate adding the other technologies. If you look at the checklist from their point of view, one of the important things was Gmail, because like I said, they're partially deployed in the cloud. So the fact that we did all the others didn't matter to them. So you have to have, you know, the starting point. But at some point in time, they know that if they change to something else, maybe they look at, since they're already cloud-based, maybe they look at moving to Office 365. Then it's just a matter of reprogramming a gateway, and they can handle that. And then they were also concerned, of course, about devices, because devices are more and more important, and that's a very fluid world. So you need to make sure whatever vendor you're talking with is comfortable with that. On the unified messaging side, though, above and beyond which system you use and which device you're talking about, there's a set of concerns that are probably as or more important than the other concerns. The industry calls these the 5 Cs: compliance, confidentiality, configuration, capacity, and, of course, cost. That one is on every list. But compliance and confidentiality are sort of the big, important ones for many people. There's so much going on in the world of e-documents and discovery and those things that kind of have a legal effect that people are very shy about what they put into their email system. And there's all kinds of ways to interpret the various rules and laws, but what we know is some people just will not put their messages into their email. Others want the ability, depending on the user's message types, like in healthcare. If I'm likely to have patient information, perhaps I don't want to put it in email where it could get out of the system. In higher ed, perhaps I'm somebody that works with in the student loan department, and I could have voicemails with confidential patient information, and FERPA, you know, comes into the same kind of effect that HIPAA would. So the flexibility that we offer to allow any user to have control over the message store. The administrator can take any user and say their messages do go into email or their messages don't go into email. If they don't go into email, we supply our own dedicated highly secure clients, both on a mobile device and on a PC, to let them still get those from a graphical user interface, so the productivity is still there, but they're isolated. They aren't going to get out of the system. And that's been a very important topic for a lot of people. As we talk about call routing, more and more we're talking about context. You know, people are mobile and they have all these things going on in their day, and it's very difficult sometimes to get them with a phone system. And more you just get their greeting. So we have designed context routing that says, when a call comes in for a user, let's go find out what's going on with that user. There's all kinds of great information in the enterprise, the calendar being the obvious one to start with. I can go into the calendar and say, so is this person in a meeting? Oh, if they're in a meeting, I'm going to create a greeting on the fly. Somebody doesn't have to go in and change your greeting all the time. We'll just build the greeting and saying, Reedy Ledgerwood is currently in a meeting and will be back at 11 a.m. I can also, in the case of Skype for Business, read their present status and change call routing and greetings based on that as well. The Atom feature package, which is our AVST Total Office Manager mostly for mobile people, but for some other people as well, rolls all this together, all the context aware, including actual context, actual presence where our mobile app can be part of that process, where when a call comes in, we can say, well, we're supposed to send the call to their desk. Are they here? Because the mobile app will tell us. We can ping that app and say, is he in the building? No, he's not. Oh, well, the next thing on his list is his home number. Is he there? And we can ping the mobile app again because we've defined those locations. That kind of advanced call routing is something everyone's interested in when we talk to them. Not everyone's deploying it yet, but it's something where people understand that's the direction where things will go, and they just feel comfortable knowing the CXE product can do that today. So Atom is a great tool for anyone who goes away from their desk that wants to keep in touch with their callers. It gives you a caller experience that far surpasses anything else out there. It increases call completion. It gives more information to the callers when they can't get to you. It takes advantage of all your other enterprise systems. So if incoming call routing is important to you, that's a discussion you should have with us then. As well as replacing your legacy voicemail, you should be looking at some of this kind of functionality as well. We also, at the same time, know that there's differences now in terms of how administration happens. So we've been developing a mobile admin client. Marketing is showing it here on a nice iPad, but it works perfectly well on an iPhone or, frankly, any HTML5 compatible telephone browser. So if you wake up and there's 4 feet of snow on the ground, you can roll over and pick up your phone and go into this app and change the call handling functionality so that your inclement weather menus come into play. So the mobile concept of administration is pretty important as well. And the last thing that almost all of our customers, but certainly San Diego State, is interested in is automation. Now, what we mean by automation is we have 2 toolkits that can run on our system. And we built a lot of things with them. And some of them are just modules you can add to our system. Like we have an outgoing call campaign application. So if you have to call 50 people every day to verify something, that can all be automated quite easily and very inexpensively. We have a full speech rec automated attendant that not only can do the system as a directory, but it can do departmental directories, location directories, things like that. But even beyond that, the tools that we use to write those kind of things are available to our customers, both for us to use through our professional services people, where you can say, what I really need is when a call comes in and they leave a message in our orders mailbox, and it hasn't been answered after a half an hour, well, we know our customers will call someone else, so I want to escalate that message somewhere else. I want to track how long individual messages have been in mailbox. Using our toolkit's an easy thing to write. We've done it for 4 or 5 customers already. I want my customers to be able to call in and enter their account number and get the latest status on a shipment, order, account, etc. Information access, IVR type functionality. Our toolkit will do that quite easily. This is not a separate product. This is simply a software license that when we turn on CXE, custom applications can be written that take advantage of all the kinds of features inside. So what can CX do? It can answer calls, it can make calls, it can gather input from callers, it can speak information. All those can be strung together into any number of custom applications. One of the great things about the product, we're very lucky that we were founded by people in the data industry that gave us a true 3-tier application as opposed to the kind of monolithic telephony applications you see. So we have this core engine, and layered on top of it are whatever types of applications you'd like, and we have a lot of them. And underneath it, supporting it, are the interface modules for interoperability. So whatever phone system you have, whatever network you have, what other enterprise data we need to access, whatever groupware calendar you have for the location-based routing, all of that is possible as well. So the platform really lets us be the ideal person to replace your legacy voicemail system, but also to position you going forward into the lovely, if somewhat frightening, world of unified communications. And that brings us here.
Okay, thanks, Neil. So we do have a couple of questions coming in. Just before we get to those, just as a reminder, if you have a question that you have not already submitted, you can find the question box toward the bottom of the webinar control panel. You probably have it minimized, so you can use that orange arrow in the upper right corner if you don't see the question box. And just also as a reminder, if you might have missed, if you joined a minute or two late, we will make the slides available. They're available now in the handouts area for download, and I'm also planning to send an email shortly after the webinar with those attached. And the recording as well will be made available, so if you are looking for that. Okay, so let's see. The first question, Neil, does AVST have a gateway product for SMDI integrations?
Yes, we have a number of ways to do SMDI integrations. There's two parts, obviously, to an SMDI integration. There's a voice channel, and we can do that with analog lines, with PRI circuits, whatever are coming off of the particular switch. And then the data channel today for true SMDI tends to be literally a data circuit brought out. And we have both the ability to bring those out, but also we have special devices that you can connect those to. One of the limitations of an SMDI link is if you connect it to one of our servers, and that server happens to be one that goes down, you would lose all your integration information. So we have a little proxy device we use where the information, once it gets to the site, is actually proxied over the network. So no single point of failure on it. And then we have things like Dialogic Media Gateways that will take an SMDI circuit, the line side coming in, the SMDI, and convert that to SIP and RTP, so we can actually virtualize the rest of the system, or even connect that particular site to call servers that are at another location and connect across the data network. So we still do quite a bit of SMDI work.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Next question, did you mention support for virtualization, and what about Hyper-V?
So we've done VMware for years now. We've just added Hyper-V to our version 8.7, which comes out, I believe, on the 15th, roughly. So if you're going to start talking to us now, yes, the version you'd get also supports Hyper-V. And we've tested high availability and live motion and those kind of features as well.
Okay. Next question about Octel. Why can't we simply change the system date back to 1989 and continue to use it?
I have heard two camps sounding out, and I have to tell you, I'm not an Octel expert. I have a camp that said, yes, that will work, and I have a camp that said, no, that won't work. And so I don't really know. So if I were a customer and really, really curious, I suppose what you could go do tonight is just set it back. Set it back to what you think it has to be and see if it's going to work. It shouldn't matter what the date really is, because, like I said, that's very much a silo-based system that's not really talking to anything. So you could try it. But even beyond the won't work at all, it's getting harder and harder to get parts for these systems. And it's kind of hard to say I've done due diligence, but I have something that if it fails, there's nobody that will guarantee they can come out and fix it. Nobody will give you a maintenance contract. There's no parts from the manufacturer. There's no support from the manufacturer. If you actually really want to, if you want to say, well, I'm just going to run this thing into the ground, well, then you can go ahead and try it and see. But to have something fail when you couldn't get it back up and going, and it would take you weeks, perhaps, to go through the process of sourcing a new system, most customers just really aren't willing to put themselves at that kind of risk.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Another question here. Any plans for integration with Xmedius for fax?
Our fax market is kind of interesting. So much fax is going into the cloud that the drive for us to integrate with anything else is not very strong. Now, that being said, we support third-party fax servers already. If those fax servers are storing the incoming faxes in Exchange or Notes, and they're marking them with a unique message class, then we do support that today. But I doubt you would see any work with custom integrations to any other fax product at this time.
Okay, great. Thanks, Neil. All right, well, it looks like that actually might be wrapping up the questions. I don't see any more coming in here unless someone is still typing. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Certainly, if you think of a question after we conclude here, you can email us at info@avst.com, and we'll make sure that that gets to Neil or the most appropriate person to follow up. And we do also follow up on all the questions that were asked here to make sure that they were answered appropriately. So again, just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us. Look for an email with the slides and or the recording, which we'll send when it's available. And of course, since you've joined us here, you'll be receiving future webinar invites from us, and we'll hope to see you on another webinar hopefully pretty soon. Neil, do you want to close us out as well?
Sure. I'd just like to thank everybody. I know it's hard to carve time out of your day to do this. Hopefully you find it useful. By all means, get in touch with us. You can always send us any information you want about webinars you'd like to see. Maybe you want to talk to us about something in specific. If you send an email to info@avst.com, we will be very prompt in getting back to you and seeing if we can help you out. So thank you, everyone.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.